series and the Conquer Your Karmic Relationships, Heal Spiritual Trauma to Open Your Heart and Restore Your Soul. And today I'm here to talk to you about, and actually my Paloma is going to be talking to us as well, because that's what she does. Yeah, see right there, you were right on camera. See that? Okay. So I'm here to talk to you about self-forgiveness and what that means. Self-forgiveness and forgiveness happens with patience and compassion for the feelings of others. It happens when we accept what's happening. We accept ourselves as we are. We accept others as they are. We accept situations exactly as they are. Once that happens, we can then open ourselves to a higher vibrational opportunity to reconcile what we need to change, to reconcile what we're actually looking for, what we want to happen. Until we actually accept things as they are, we can't really start over, and we don't actually get the direction that we need to make the choices that we need to move forward in any situation. So self-forgiveness or forgiveness actually comes when you're in a position to begin again. My definition of forgiveness is starting over, beginning again at 0 point. Once you start over, and starting over doesn't necessarily mean you can't change the past, but once you accept how it's been, accept what has happened, and then allow yourself to look at what and how you want to move forward, that's when forgiveness occurs. It means that you are willing to move on from all the dynamics of the past, from the bitterness, the sadness, the frustration, the grief, the anxiety, everything in the past that created those emotions, that you're willing to move on from that and start anew, start fresh. So I want to take a minute and I want to read something. Because oftentimes when we're talking about forgiveness, we're talking about overcoming scarcity. And so I want to read something, a little excerpt from the book. And it says, overcoming scarcity. Forgiveness is a way of life. It is a perspective that allows for bitterness to seep into the ground and become useful for the seeds of inclusivity to grow. It is important to begin by using your deeply held beliefs to uncover and reveal the truth. Your truth leads to the truth. The convictions we hold that are true for us and become the basis of our separation from others, ultimately they make way to what universally connects us and includes everyone. So when we talk about forgiveness, we are also talking about inclusivity. I had an interesting conversation with someone, and he was talking about being in a relationship and that the relationship was awful and the person had been awful to him and abusive to him. And he's really struggled with how to release that person from his life. He's tried ignoring them. He's tried running from them. He's tried doing everything that he can to move away from this person. And yet they keep coming, they keep coming, they keep coming. You know, they're practically stalking. And so the nature of our conversation was, well, consider that what you really want and what that person really wants is to not feel ignored, hurt, rejected. When you recognize in a relationship, like a love relationship, when you decide you're no longer, there is no space for you to be in relationship with this person in the way in which you have been relating. And in this case, there was physical abuse. So he was not going to continue to participate in that relationship. And when you recognize that there is no way to move forward in the relationship as it had existed, that allows you to be clear, definitive, honest, and loving, and to vocalize that love and connection while moving forward. Like that is the mechanism that allows both parties to move forward. Hey, I hear that you want to be with me, and I forgive you for what you've done. I forgive your conduct, but I no longer choose to be with you. So I forgive you and I love you, and that love still exists, but I don't choose to be with you. That gives the partner some truth to reconcile with for themselves, but they are no longer reconciling with you. Right? The key is that both parties have to reconcile the situation, the relationship as it existed. And until they're ready, willing, and able to do that, and until they're given the opportunity to do that, right? Somebody could have been awful and abusive and hateful and mean and cruel and evil. They could have been all of those things to you. But the truth is, what we really want, and especially when we break up in trauma, when we split apart in any situation in trauma, what we most want to do is to repair the love that was once there. Love doesn't go away. We just build walls against it, in front of it, obstacles to it. And so when you take the opportunity to repair each of those walls, when you are honest and definitive and you assert yourself and your own self-respect and your own self-love, it allows you a whole other level of honesty with another person to be able to forgive what they've done, but to recognize that it is that you aren't going to be able to move forward in that relationship in that way at all. And that doesn't change the love that you felt or feel. When you recognize that love is a through line, it diminishes somebody's, oftentimes when there's an abusive dynamic in a relationship, the abuser wants to intimidate the victim or the victimized person. He wants to intimidate them into doing what they want. And the person who is victimized is reeling from that habit of continually being victimized. And so there's a lot of levels or a lot of ground to be gained by the person who's been victimized in terms of changing their mind about what that means about them and what that means about their partner. And then changing that habit, changing that immediate response of stepping back from what they know to be true in their heart. Oftentimes, when there is trauma, people split apart. And they do that immediately and they think it's forever. But eventually, days, weeks, years go by, and there has to be a reconciliation of the love that was once there, and to express that love once again. It doesn't mean that you're going to jeopardize your safety by being with or even being around a person who doesn't have self-mastery and who is unable to control their personal feelings or work through their own issues. I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about jeopardizing one's safety, but telepathically in your heart, in your connection to that person, there has to be a reconciliation of that love and an acknowledgement of that love that creates a foundation for both parties to truly move away from one another and open themselves up to other relationships or situations that meet the needs of both of the partners with other people. So when we talk about forgiveness, that's what we're talking about, is getting to that place where you are able to truly walk away and not need to look back. You can run into that person at the grocery store. You can hear about them in your circle. You can think of them and not have any feeling, not have remorse, bitterness, rage, anger, or grief and sadness for the loss of them. That you are truly even in accepting that exactly how things happened was what needed to happen in order to bring you to this current state of peace and wisdom. That is forgiveness. So, I see a few people out there. Does anybody have any questions for me about forgiveness? Excuse me 1 second. My cord fell out. Okay, so let's see. We have, when asking forgiveness of others, there's a lot of talk about making amends to move forward. But how do you make amends to yourself? So amends, the idea of amends is is great, because when you're asking, just because you ask forgiveness for someone, from someone, doesn't mean that you're actually making amends. If you are a person who, unless and until you have found true forgiveness for yourself, and not, I don't even know what the word is, but not superficial forgiveness, like, hey, I need your forgiveness because I need to move forward. Energetically, until you have truly worked through all the levels that brought you to that state of conflict, grieved its presence, processed it through, and then forgiven yourself and released the other person from any sort of obligation to that. You have to release them, and then they must release themselves. So until that has happened, there are no amends and there is no forgiveness. Okay? So when we talk about forgiveness, you can totally ask for forgiveness, but it will open you up to what the true process is to attaining that deep sense of release and evenness when it comes to reconciling any relationship. Making amends to yourself means that you admit to yourself what you did. You admit to yourself everything that took place to put you in the condition to do that thing, right? At the end of the day, we don't truly forgive ourselves until we can really feel at peace that we're not going to do the same thing again in the same circumstance. And the only way to guarantee that is that we have to trust ourselves that we are no longer in that condition to ever be in that circumstance again. Does that make sense? So when you know that you have transformed yourself, that your go-to, like if you're let's say you're in an argument, somebody has a secret and you told everybody about their secret and they're mad at you. You have to recognize, well, why did you do that? What is it you needed by what is it you gained by doing that thing? And until maybe it's about your relationship to them, maybe it's about your relationship to yourself, maybe it's about your relationship to other people, or getting attention, or feeling not rejected or connected, whatever it is. There are circumstances that you had that led you to be in the condition to make a promise and break it. And so part of forgiveness for you is dealing with your own sense of what brought you to that position in the first place. Okay, so that's making amends to yourself. So that's what you have to do to make amends to yourself. Melanie says, okay, I understand what you're saying, but how do you forgive yourself if you have messed up? Well, we don't do things that we don't on some level need to do. I'm not saying that that's good for everyone involved. But you are doing whatever it is that you did it for a reason, and you gained something from it. Well, let's talk about relationships. And let's say we have two parties that come together and one person cheats. and it breaks up the relationship. And then years later, they both go to get in new relationships. Both of those people are going to have to contend with, the cheater is going to have to say, well, why did I break that promise? What did I gain from that? What did I want from that? Right? And decide how they want to move forward. Because that's something that anytime we don't make choices in relationships based on what other people do first. We make choices based on our development of integrity up until that point. What our choices are is not somebody else's fault. I mean, ultimately, you have to get to that position of accountability. So the more and more you understand how you got to where you are, we have prisons filled with criminals. And many of those criminals have been deeply abused. They have only learned how to lie, cheat, and steal. And that became a way of life that ended them up in the condition and the position that they're in. And the only way every individual is going to change their circumstances and shift their condition is to recognize how they got there in the first place and offer forgiveness. Forgiveness comes when we go, oh, okay, I get it. But that's no longer my circumstance. I stole the loaf of bread because I was hungry and I had no money. Now my circumstances are different, or I'm different, and I see that I can do something different now to remedy my issue. Right? That's, I am choosing lowest common denominator our relationships to things, because what we do out of scarcity, we do out of lack, we do out of fear. So those are the questions that you have to answer to yourself. And once you do that and recognize that you, in fact, you've changed and that you now understand you have more information and can do something different than what you'd done before, which brought you the result you did not like. Once that's taken place, that is forgiveness. Forgiveness doesn't happen just because you say it. Saying it starts you on a process or journey to forgiveness. Okay, so yes, Frederick says makes sense. That's awesome. Difficult to overcome circumstances sometimes. Here's the thing. At any time, anything can be difficult. But I guarantee you it will stay difficult if you focus on how difficult it is. At any given time, when we change our belief, our assumption about life, even a degree or two, and say, wow, this condition that I'm in, I don't feel good. I'm mad about it, and I don't know how to get out of it. When we can change any one of those things, I don't like where I'm at, and I want to change it. How do I change it? That becomes the mantra, is how do I change it? How do I change it? How do I change it? And the more you call out to the universe, the more you grieve your losses. Here's the thing. Anytime we are in a situation that we don't like and we begin to grieve our presence in that condition, that literally opens up a portal from the universe to you to show you the next logical step for you to take to move you out of your condition. So that's just what happens. And you don't have to believe it. You just have to start out on that path, making one little step at a time until you get where you need to be. Does that make sense? Yeah. So Melanie says, she says, in my case, it was being in confinement. This is a deep question, because ultimately people can put constraints on us, but ultimately we have to accept them. And ultimately, what oftentimes people do is they end up choosing them for themselves. So it begins with a change in your mind and then ultimately in your heart. When you decide, let's say you're in a dangerous situation and you're confined and it's dangerous. You are afraid to speak up or to speak out for fear of your mortality. The change that begins is, I need to be out of here. I need to stay alive. Everyone needs to stay alive. I just can't be here anymore. How do I do that? What next? Right? The next step is to look at what is the next possible step. How do I get out of here, and how do I do that safely? Right? Because there is 1,000 ways to get out of a situation if you don't really care what happens for you or anybody else in the situation. So you start with one small thought and you continue to focus on that thought until that thought begins to expand. And then it expands into your emotional body and you grieve all the things that brought you to that condition, to that position. And as that Rumspringa, for some, I just think of that all the time, Rumspringa. Somebody who's been in a completely focused, regimented way of life, and then to go out and completely defy everything that they've learned, to have experiences, to open themselves up. That's what you're being asked to do, is to create a Rumspringa of your mind, to create this whole new, to call on this whole new dynamic. But keep in mind that you want to be safe in doing so. Okay. So thank you all for participating today. It's been just a pleasure. There's no more questions. I think that we will wrap it up here and take this opportunity to think about what you need to forgive. Where in your life do you want to, do you need to, or can you begin again? Not running from the past, but moving away from the past because it no longer is informing your present or your future. So thank you very much, everyone, for participating with me today. It's always a pleasure, and have a magnificent rest of your day.